One Sports.
And it is a great day to be alive on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on this fabulous Football Friday. It is You Better You Bet presented by BetMGM. A lot to get to today. We now know for sure who the U.S. is going to play on Wednesday in that knockout round matchup of the World Cup, the round of 32 in Santa Clara. Yeah, they lost last night, but it didn't really mean anything. I'll tell you what about last night really does mean something. If you want to extract anything from the fact that the U.S. lost 3-2 to Turkey and that they'll meet Bosnia next Wednesday, I have some things to extract, some things to look for, because here in this summer of soccer, or on a fabulous Football Friday, either way, however you want to go with it, is you want to go into it feeling like you know something. And look, as a sports fan, I'm right there with you. If you're an average, everyday American sports fan, and apologies to all the footy fans out there, if you're an average, everyday American sports fan, you don't go through life thinking a great deal about the world's game. You don't. And when the opportunity comes around to really plug into it, you spend some time acclimating. That's what we've done for the last few weeks. We've acclimated during the group stage. Now we're ready for the knockout rounds. And I'll tell you what to look for Wednesday in that matchup between the U.S. men's national team and Bosnia-Herzegovina, based on what we saw in the group stage, especially last night with the return of Christian Pulisic. Major League Baseball and the Players Association continue to go back and forth. I'm starting to really come down on one side in this thing, and I hate to do that because I'd like to believe there are still some vestiges of impartiality left in this hollowed out carcass of a man who 25 years ago, good Lord, I'm old, majored in journalism at Penn State. I'd like to believe there are some bits and pieces of journalistic integrity left in me that I could look at an issue even-handedly. I'll do my best, even though I'm really coming down on one side in today's show. Talked yesterday about people doing stupid things, Terry and Arnold. This on a much smaller scale, but another member of the NFL continues to do stupid things. We'll talk about that here in the first hour. I'm sure we will continue to get moves made in the NBA offseason now that we're past the draft and looking ahead to free agency. The NHL has its own draft starting tonight, and then their free agency starts on Wednesday as well. So much to get into. We're at the just about mathematical halfway point of the Major League Baseball season. So we'll take a look at where things stand right now and maybe try to cherry pick some teams that we think could find their way into the current playoff picture with 80 to 82 more games to go for most teams. Tommy Smith, legendary soccer commentator, is going to join us in the Power Hour, the final hour of the show, right at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific here on Westwood One Sports. Obviously, we'll talk everything World Cup, including the U.S. men's national team and what's ahead of them. Plus, it's a Friedel Friday as well. Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel will join us right around 11:20 Eastern, 8:20 Pacific. A lot to get to. So let's start to unwrap it, my friends. Let's start to prepare ourselves for the weekend by looking at the 5 biggest stories of the day right off the top. We call it the High Five.
Five.
Ball breaks free. Gets it. 7 seconds. Ball to drive. And ball lays it in. There's no timeouts left for Miami. Charlotte up by 1. The drive. It's over. Mitchell got negated. The Hornets win it. A wild night in Charlotte.
That feels like it was ages ago. Ian Eagle and Stan Van Gundy on Prime in the final seconds of the Eastern Conference 9-10 play-in game. You remember that now? That was a while ago. We were all riding a LaMelo Ball high that night, except for maybe Bam Adebayo. But we were all riding it. And over the last 24 hours, now that we've had time to process it, I still believe in my immediate take from yesterday that LaMelo Ball in Minnesota ends one of two ways. Either a trip to the conference finals or a fist fight. Probably with Anthony Edwards. Maybe with Chris Finch. Because that's the thing that as I've sat and processed and thought more and more about it over the last 24 hours, I come back to. It's going to go just one of two ways. And really it doesn't feel like much in between. Because there is a chance that LaMelo Ball buys in to what Finchie wants to do in Minnesota. A team that's been built for the last half decade on defense decides that they're going to not totally move in a different direction. They didn't trade Rudy Gobert, but they did trade Naz Reid. And the Charlotte aspect of this is important. But from the Minnesota perspective, you move away from Naz Reid. So you weaken your interior depth a good bit, but you bring in LaMelo Ball. Here's the problem. LaMelo Ball, a volume shooter, a guy who wants to have the ball in his hands and wants to take the final shot, and now all of a sudden, he's got to play nice with Anthony Edwards. And Ant has to play nice with LaMelo. And how is this all going to work out when we're in the huddle before the final shot of a game? I said it yesterday. I will continue to say it until we see it play itself out, not just during the regular season, but through next spring's postseason as well. Yeah, I'm putting the Hornets in the playoffs, or the T-Wolves in the playoffs. Sorry. Obviously, the T-Wolves will be in the playoffs. Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, Ayo Dosunmu back on a big extension, and LaMelo. And what's it look like in those big critical moments? And how do these two coexist, not just in the locker room, but in the backcourt, Edwards and Ball? These questions won't be answered for another 9 or 10 months, at least. But I do think it's interesting to me that the Timberwolves have said, defense is fun, but we don't think we can beat Oklahoma City and San Antonio that way. We've got to bring in a volume shooter. If LaMelo buys in, it could work. Like I said, trip to the conference finals maybe. If LaMelo doesn't buy in, yeesh, it's going to end poorly. Next.
4.
Robertson tees it up. Robertson to the goal line. Centering pass.
Jason Robertson scoring in Game 5 of the first round of the Stanley Cup playoffs for the Dallas Stars against the Minnesota Wild. He's a goal-scoring phenom. Bob Wischusen on the call there on ESPN during that game. And Jason Robertson said to the Kraken last night, no thanks. Big, fat, 8-year, $15 million a year deal was laid out in front of him. He is a restricted free agent, but was granted permission to talk to the Kraken by the Dallas Stars front office because they've seen the writing on the wall, it seems, that Robertson is going to look to break the bank, and they can't make it work. So they're trying to get what they can before somebody swoops in with some sort of RFA tender offer sheet, and it blows things up for them. Robertson is the most interesting piece available. Hockey fans know this. The most interesting piece available this offseason in the NHL. You can talk about Morgan Riley. You can talk about Connor Hellebuck. You can talk... You can, if you want to, smoke enough that through the haze you see an Austin Matthews deal maybe. But I'm here to tell you the most interesting piece to move this summer in the NHL will be Jason Robertson. The question is, where does he want to go? I have an indecent proposal, okay? I have an indecent proposal for Jason Robertson coming up before the end of the first hour here on You Better You Bet that I think makes sense for him, makes sense for the Stars, make sense for the team that would acquire him. We will get into that in about 30 minutes here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos here today. The 5 biggest stories of the day to start the show. We call it the High Five. On to number 3.
3.
I mean, Caitlin to the ground, and that's a hand to the neck, and then Alyssa Thomas steps over her. See, that's the kind of stuff that can incite some future trouble.
From USA Network, it didn't incite much, let's be honest. At least not as far as discipline goes for Alyssa Thomas from the WNBA. A 1-game suspension. And look, I'm not going to sit here and defend Caitlin Clark as always innocent. Like any other athlete, okay? Any other athlete gets into it with an opponent from time to time. Any other athlete will throw their hands up in a WTF motion towards an official at times. Happens to every athlete. We see it all the time. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like she's a saint. But can we acknowledge the fact that there seems to be an open, not just distaste for Caitlin Clark from the rest of the WNBA and most of its players, but like a visceral hatred towards her? And look, the league has other stars. They do. I mean, how many times did you share a Sophie Cunningham meme yesterday? 16 gazillion times, right? The pointing meme? Yeah. We all shared at least half a dozen of them yesterday. And, hell, look, you just had somebody drop 57 points last night, tying the league record, 53, pardon me. Marina Mabrey for Toronto. So there are other stars in the WNBA, okay? But let's stop losing the forest for the trees here. Everybody in the WNBA has a visceral hatred for Caitlin Clark, despite the fact that Caitlin Clark's arrival on the scene is what helped them push for a new CBA, a massive increase in salaries, massive viewership, which helps push those rights fees and salaries farther up. Without Caitlin Clark, I wouldn't say there's no WNBA. It's existed for 2 decades now. But without Caitlin Clark, the WNBA is not nearly as close to the average sports fan's radar as it is right now in this moment. And yet Caitlin Clark gets a hand to the neck, gets kicked occasionally, smacked occasionally. And again, she's not the only person who receives a little physical punishment in sports. But she receives all of this, and the one person, the one star who has helped make the NBA, who has made the WNBA what it is right now, is Caitlin Clark. And that Alyssa Thomas transgression draws a 1-game suspension? Ask NHL fans of the late 80s and early 90s, mid 90s, what happens when you don't protect the stars. The game gets bogged down. I'm telling you, if you don't protect the stars, the game gets bogged down. And that's what we're seeing in the WNBA. Caitlin Clark, who is the Magic Johnson and Larry Bird of the WNBA, in that when she came to the league, the eyeballs and the money came as well. All due credit to executive producer Bill Zimmerman. He and I had a conversation this morning, and he made a fantastic point. If you are old enough to remember it, you know exactly what I'm about to tell the youngs about. I wasn't old enough to remember when Magic Johnson and Larry Bird came into the NBA, but I've certainly watched enough documentaries and read enough books to know that before Magic and Larry came into the NBA was moribund. It was dying. Nobody was watching it. The NBA Finals were on tape delay. Nobody watched the NBA in the late 70s. Nobody cared. Certainly not on the level that people care now. Magic and Bird came along, changed everything. And here we are, some 45 years later, and the same thing is happening in the WNBA. They have stars come along, led by Caitlin Clark, the singular star, who is packing 20,000 people into buildings, packing 20 million people onto television screens, bringing money in a new CBA to the WNBA, and she's treated as if she's the enemy. What are you doing? What are you doing in the WNBA? A one-game suspension for Alyssa Thomas for that. Next.
2.
Fly ball, left field, that's hit well. Lyles going back toward the wall. Gone! Opposite field, 2-run home run. Bryce Harper, the 9th inning magic, strikes again.
From NBC Sports Philly, Phillies, with more, as they said, their 9th inning magic, beat the Nats last night. That's Bryce Harper's 2-run opposite field homer in the top of the 9th in Washington. That's the biggest story from the field last night. The biggest story from off the field. I got to give Major League Baseball, the league, credit. They keep putting forth proposals. And sometimes they're a little weird and a little out there, like the one last week about completely overhauling the draft, limiting it to just college players, holding an international draft. I'll be honest, don't know if I'm totally on board with that. But I will tell you where they've gone right. Every step along the way throughout this process, Major League Baseball has tried to put forth proposals that the average fan seems interested in. From the very beginning of this thing, when it started with a cap and a floor system that they proposed, to a handful of proposals yesterday, most of which I think resonate with fans and should resonate with some players. An increase in minimum salaries to $1 million over the next 2 years, an elimination of qualifying offers in free agency, which has stifled free agency at times. Free agency starting a year earlier for players after 5 years of service time or the age of 30, whichever comes first, instead of 6 years. An elimination of salary deferrals. I know I, as a fan, and most fans, if you're not wearing Dodger blue, believe that should be enacted. You can't push 80% of a massive contract 20 years out into the future. A variation of bird rights that they have in the NBA, where you have a better opportunity to retain your own free agents. The one thing I do have a hard time getting on board with yesterday was the hard cap on contract lengths and values. They haven't done that in other capped leagues. The cap is a team cap, and you don't cap the individual salaries. That one I would push back on. But for the most part, the league keeps putting forth good faith proposals, at least trying to get the conversational ball rolling, as long as everything's underneath the umbrella of a cap and floor system, which, again, I, as a fan, agree with. Cap the teams that are spending wildly so that they can't just keep buying their way out of whatever mistakes they make, and put a hard floor in so that those 8 to 10 teams that refuse to spend what we all know they can spend, and I say this as a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, that those 8 to 10 teams that refuse to spend what we all know they can spend are finally forced to spend at least that much. Cap and floor, as long as everything falls under that umbrella, I'm with you. But here are the players and the Players Association sitting at the table like a petulant toddler, refusing to eat their vegetables. I don't like peas. Well, tough. Your fans want peas. No, your fans want a cap. Sorry, it's early still. Your fans want a cap and a floor. And as my dad used to say, and it was bad, when I stayed with my grandparents, my grandfather was a real hard ass. Old school Presbyterian minister, you will sit there, son, and you will sit there until that plate is clean. This is a man I saw nearly jump for joy when Nolan Ryan gave Robin Ventura that headlock. Anyway, you will sit there until the plate is clean. And right in the middle of the plate, MLBPA, is that big pile of vegetables. It's called a cap and a floor system. And until you clear your plate, I don't think fans are going to listen to anything else you want to say. And as long as the owners keep giving you good faith proposals to at least get the talk started, they're going to be the ones, at least in my opinion, drawing forth the support from fans who know that something has to change. Finally, the 5 biggest stories of the day here on Westwood One Sports, the High Five. Let's get to number 1.
1.
Turkish fans are listening. The USA's big star gets nutmegs. Goaler still trying to get in. Chance for a cross. Comes back to the top of the box. Now it's clipped in at the backside. Matt Turner, it's downtown. Turkey score the winning goal in the 98th minute. They might be going home tomorrow, but they're going wild now.
From Fox, the game winner for Turkey in stoppage time. And the U.S. loses, but they knew they were advancing. They knew where they were going. They'd already won the group. They know who they're facing. Turkey gets a win before they have to fly back across the globe. So on the surface, it means nothing, really. What, 9 new starters inserted into the 11-man lineup, I believe, by Mauricio Pochettino last night. So that wasn't the takeaway. The U.S. lost. No, that's not the takeaway. I think there are some takeaways from what we saw last night for the U.S. And I do think there are some ways to push it forward into what we may see in their first knockout round matchup, the round of 32, Wednesday afternoon in Santa Clara. I want to do that in just a minute here on Westwood One Sports. I want to take what we've seen throughout the group stage, and I want to push it forward into Wednesday's round of 32 match and beyond, including what we saw from Christian Pulisic. We're going to do all that coming up next, plus a little bit later in the show, the pros and cons of this latest MLB proposal. We will power rank the best wide receiver groups in the NFL, because we did tight ends yesterday. And speaking of wide receivers, a wide receiver did something dumb yesterday. I don't know what he's thinking. And an indecent proposal for Jason Robertson and the Dallas Stars, all on the way. But next, Christian Pulisic back, and the U.S. looks ready for the knockout round. What's it going to look like? What do we take away from last night and the 3 group stage matches for the U.S. men's national team? That's next right here on Westwood One Sports.
McKenzie tries to load up the long throw. Man down for the U.S. Ball's knocked down. Follow-up shot is a goal! And Sebastian Berhalter, who ties the game, and he wants more!
Let's get back to You Better You Bet on the BetMGM Network.
That was worth staying up for until the very bitter end anyway. U.S. falls 3-2 to Turkey in their final group stage match of the 2026 World Cup. Sebastian Berhalter's goal there tied it, though, at 2 apiece in the second half, as you heard it on Fox. Welcome back in Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, I have an indecent proposal for Jason Robertson and the Dallas Stars with the NHL draft tonight, and we would presume a deer kneeling. Look out in your backyard, our backyard, deer. Look, a deer kneeling. No, a deal nearing. Time for another sip of coffee. If you go from a deal nearing to a deer kneeling, yeah, it's time to get the coffee going. Also, I don't know what this one person is doing, but it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's just stinking of desperation. That coming up before 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific, at which point, top of the hour, we'll go through the pros and cons of the latest proposal from Major League Baseball to the Players Association. A little later, about an hour from now, we'll power rank the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. Final hour, the power hour here on You Better You Bet. 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific. Tommy Smith, legendary soccer commentator, will join us. Also, Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel to talk about the LaMelo trade to Minnesota and everything else that's gone on in the past week. It's a lot. But I want to be clear about something real quick. I am not a footy aficionado. That's why Tommy Smith is going to be on later in the show. The man has been knee-deep in soccer since before I was born. He knows the game backward and forward and upside down and right side up. So he is the expert. We will talk to him a little bit later. But I will tell you that now that we're through what I would call the acclimation period, you know how high school, I don't know if they do this in other states, but in Pennsylvania anyway, they have what they call heat acclimation, where the first 2 weeks of high school football training camp, in August, they slowly get you acclimated to the heat. This has been an acclimation period for average everyday sports fans like myself to get up to speed on what we're watching at the World Cup. And I'll tell you, after watching through 3 group stage matches and watching what we saw last night and doing plenty of research about who the U.S. will be facing on Wednesday in Bosnia-Herzegovina in Santa Clara, round of 32 knockout match. I have my thoughts about what we saw during the group stage match and how it translates into Wednesday afternoon. Hold on, let's get to that in 1 second. Breaking news. We will get to baseball in a little bit more detail, as I mentioned at the top of the hour. But, bing bong, the Mets have fired Carlos Mendoza, according to John Heyman. That just broke literally 60 seconds ago. I mean, well overdue, it feels like, for the Mets to start to just rip things apart all the way down. I was going to say down to the studs. But that analogy implies that you don't need to just demolish the whole thing. And so Carlos Mendoza out. John Heyman reporting the Mets have fired him. As we get more details, obviously, we'll keep you up to date on that. Andy Green taking over in the interim. Is anybody shocked at that? Seriously. The Mets have been an abject disaster. The 6 errors on Wednesday night had to be the straw that broke the camel's back. Had to be. I know Carlos Mendoza wasn't out there in the field actually partaking in that, but I'm sorry. Something had to change a long time ago, like a month and a half ago. And finally it has. the Mets have fired Carlos Mendoza. Again, we'll get back into baseball at the top of the hour. I want to talk about what we saw in L.A. last night, though. The U.S. men's national team losing to Turkey. I think when you do the research on Bosnia, who they're going to face on Wednesday, it's important to note that Bosnia wants to play physically. They want to play some keep away if they can, maintain possession, even if it's on their own side of the field. And they're going to, I think I'm going to use a football analogy because I think more average everyday sports fans are football fans than football fans. I'm going to use a football analogy to try and gain a glimpse of insight into football. So, at times in the NFL, and college football for that matter, there are teams that want to lean on the run game and possess the football, keep it out of the opposition's hands, and use that ability to lean on the run game to create play action opportunities downfield, right? And occasionally take big swings and big shots down the field. Like, think of, I think a good analogy for this would be like when the Niners went into Philly. I think it was a wild card game in 2024. It's not that long ago. I shouldn't be able to remember it. They were all about not asking Brock Purdy to go out and win the game. Let's lean on McCaffrey. Let's run the ball, and we'll take our deep shots. And it worked. They upset the Eagles in that game. That's what Bosnia is going to try to do to the U.S., to put football in football terms. Bosnia is going to try to play physically, control possession if they can, and play keep away from the U.S. playmakers, especially in the middle of the field, and then occasionally swing it wide and take some deep shots. And I think there is one little reason to have some level of concern if you're a U.S. soccer fan. And that is that things got a little shaky on the defensive end multiple times at really, really poor moments last night. Like, you jump out to an early lead, and then 5 minutes later, you give up a response goal. Late in the game, everyone's running around like chickens with their head cut off. You give up the game winner. That's how Bosnia gets the U.S. if they get them on Wednesday. Now, just to be clear, again, not a soccer expert, but to my amateur, average, everyday sports fan eyes, U.S. is a more talented squad, and they're the better team, and they should win. And I think even the soccer experts would agree to that. And Christian Pulisic looked like a guy ready to take over in moments last night. And if you get that again on Wednesday in Santa Clara, the U.S. wins. Because they're the more talented team. And they're going to be able to funnel the ball through the middle, as they've done throughout this tournament so far, and create moments of opportunity to score goals. But they've got to be careful on the back end, because Bosnia will sit and wait and try to lull them to sleep and then take those deep shots downfield. So that's how we do two things. We take what we've seen through the first three group stage matches and we apply it to what we think could happen on Wednesday. And we also try to build the analogy of football to football. Again, if you remember the Niners-Eagles playoff game of a couple years ago, remember the Jawan Jennings trick play, the touchdown throw? That's the kind of stuff Bosnia is going to try to do to the U.S. They're going to sit, and they're going to wait, and they're going to wait, and they're going to wait, and then they're going to see the breakdown, or they're going to try to force the breakdown by taking their deep shots. You're going to get a much better insight into what exactly we've seen from the U.S. and what is to come when Tommy Smith, legendary soccer commentator, joins us in about an hour and 20 minutes from now at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific, here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM. Top of the hour, the pros and cons of the latest Major League Baseball proposal to the Players Union. Does firing Carlos Mendoza now save anything for the Mets? Or had they done this 6 weeks ago, would they have had a chance to maybe save the season or at least avoid a complete and total collapse? We can touch on that at the top of the hour as well. But coming up next, someone just reeks of desperation, and I don't think there's any way this person gets what they're looking for, that they are so clearly thirsting for right out in front of everybody on social media. That's next, right here on Westwood One Sports.
This is You Better You Bet, presented by BetMGM.
Time for the world's top stars to go head-to-head on the pitch. You can grab today's Odds Boost token and join the excitement in the BetMGM app. Make your World's Game moment. Activate your token for any World's Game bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if your bet wins. Download the BetMGM app today. Please gamble responsibly. Tommy Smith, the legend, joins us at 11 Eastern, about an hour and 15 minutes from now, 8 Pacific, to talk about what we saw from Team USA last night, Christian Pulisic returning to the pitch, what we got out of him in those 30-plus minutes that he did play. It looked really good to my unprofessional soccer-watching eyes, but we'll ask Tommy at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. Top of the hour, the pros and cons of this latest MLB proposal to the Players Association, and also if we have any continued fallout throughout the morning to the firing of Carlos Mendoza by the Mets. We'll keep you up to date on that, as that just broke about 20 minutes ago here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on You Better You Bet. I want to let you hear something for yourself that just continues to make no sense to me in a couple of minutes. But first, before we get to people acting thirsty on social media, an indecent proposal for Jason Robertson. If you're a hockey fan, you know exactly who Jason Robertson is. Goal-scoring dynamo for the Dallas Stars, who is a restricted free agent this offseason and is looking to get a massive deal. Has turned down $12 million per year in an extension offer from the Stars, according to reports. Was given permission to talk to the Seattle Kraken last night, at least his people were, and turned down $15 million a year. For those unaware, the NHL salary cap is just skyrocketing this offseason. The NHL draft takes place tonight. We've seen a lot of sign-in trades or trades and then signings take place over the last few days. Gavin McKenna expected to go first overall to the Toronto Maple Leafs tonight in the draft, but I would also suspect we continue to get a flurry of activity. The Toronto Maple Leafs rumored to be shopping Morgan Riley all over the place. The Winnipeg Jets looking to find a landing spot for disgruntled goaltender Connor Hellebuck, who you may remember from his performance in the Olympics for Team USA. But the biggest name available out there is Jason Robertson. I have an indecent proposal. And call me a homer if you will. I'll finally wear that. I'll happily wear that. Why not the Pittsburgh Penguins? Why not? Another team with a massive amount of cap space. A team that has plenty of draft assets to trade to Dallas for Robertson's rights if they'd like. And a few young players, up-and-coming young players around. But why not Jason Robertson to be in the same lineup with Sidney Crosby as Crosby's career winds down over the next several years? Robertson comes in, becomes the face of the Penguins franchise, and gets to play with Sidney Crosby. Look, I don't think there's a kid who's grown up playing hockey in the last 20 years who didn't wonder what it would be like to play with Ovechkin or Crosby at some point. Here would be your opportunity. You know they've got the cap space. Penguins GM Kyle Dubas is doing everything he can to try and remake the Penguins into a contender while keeping the old core of Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Christopher Letang around. I think it's a win-win for everybody. Again, maybe I'm a homer, but that's my indecent proposal. Kyle Dubas on the horn to the Dallas Stars and Jason Robertson to get it done tonight during the first round of the NHL draft. I'm here for it. But as mentioned, somebody is continually thirsty online or crazy online or both. The Brandon Ayuk nonsense continues. This from his Instagram yesterday.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Binky. I'm back in action and back on tour this fall. Go to www.commanders.com to get your tickets and watch us rock out.
What? No, you don't play for the Commanders. You can't just manifest this, Brandon Ayuk. That's not how this works. Look, John Lynch has not been the best general manager in football over the last several years, but I will say this. I will back John Lynch fully and unequivocally if he lets Brandon Ayuk just rot on the restricted list. This is ridiculous. You can't just go on social media every day and say that you're going to play for the Commanders when you're still technically under contract with the 49ers. You can't do that. That's not how it works. You don't get to just name what team you're playing for. You're not a free agent. I get it. The Niners don't want him anymore. As Lynch said, he's probably played his last snap for San Francisco. But unless the Commanders are willing to give me something of some consequence, I'm not just cutting this dude and letting him walk off to D.C. to play with his buddy Jaden Daniels. Oh, hell no. I'll give it to Stone Cold. No. I'm not going to just let him. No, you don't just get to go. You don't get to name your destination, Brandon Ayuk. It's getting to the point where it's kind of creepy, but more so just dumb. Just dumb. Without even the B. D-U-M. Dumb by Brandon Ayuk. Because no amount of public pressure is going to get John Lynch and the 49ers to go, oh, sorry, we misunderstood. You wanted to go to Washington. Okay, yeah, we'll make Commanders. Sure, we'll make that happen. No amount of TikToks dancing in the hallway of your house with a Commanders hat on, telling people that you're going to be back on tour this fall, playing in Washington and go to commanders.com to buy tickets, is going to get the 49ers to do this for you. You idiot. What are you even thinking? Act like a grown-ass man. This is not it, Brandon Ayuk. This is just utter stupidity. And it continues on a daily basis now. That's the thing. You can't just manifest your way to your best buddy's team. That's not how this works. Not when you're still under contract with someone. This isn't LeBron and Dwayne Wade going for a ride on a banana boat and then deciding to play together in Miami. That was something called free agency. It dumbfounds me. In a world where perhaps we hyper-focus on the stupidity of certain athletes sometimes, this to me is well worth and well-deserved of a hyper-focus on the stupidity of Brandon Ayuk. Stop. Shut your mouth and act like a grown-ass man and see if you can't get released. But don't think that they're going to do it to you as a favor so you can go off to Washington and play with your BFF. Coming up next, I thought it was another good faith proposal. We'll outline what Major League Baseball offered to the players yesterday next here on Westwood One Sports.
the thrill of the action.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. What the hell's going on out here?
No idea what's going on, but I am excited.
Every pick, every play, every game-changing moment.
Unbelievable!
This is You Better You Bet, brought to you by BetMGM on Westwood One Sports.
Breaking news in the first hour of the show. We'll update you on that in just a moment in case you missed it, plus the pros and cons of the latest proposal to the Players Association from Major League Baseball here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. Coming up in the final hour of the show, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific, we will talk World Cup with the great Tommy Smith, legendary soccer commentator, and also talk everything that's gone on this week. Trades, draft, pending free agency with Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel. It is a Friedel Friday. It's a football Friday, but also football, because I just got done ranting and raving about Brandon Ayuk being a lunatic, probably sounding like a lunatic in my own regard. Nonetheless, wide receivers, the topic of the day. We talked tight ends yesterday. Coming up in 20 minutes, I will power rank my best wide receiver groups in the NFL right now. We had some contention yesterday about best tight end groups because I didn't include the Las Vegas Raiders and Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer in my top 5. Womp womp. Who will you get mad that I don't include in the top 5 for wide receiver groups today? There will be at least one. Oh, there will be at least one. Quick recap of the tight end rankings, by the way. You can find it on social media. Just follow You Better You Bet and Westwood One Sports. I had the Rams 1, the Bears 2, the Steelers 3, the Bills 4, the Chiefs 5. Everybody got mad at me for not including the Raiders. But we'll get back into football, not football, football in a couple of minutes. What the hell did the Mets do now? Before I break down this proposal from Major League Baseball to the Players Association, that's the breaking news of the last 45 minutes or so. Mets have finally fired Carlos Mendoza. What do they do? How far down do they tear it, I guess is the question. They dealt lefty David Peterson, was it the day before yesterday, to the Cubs. Okay, that's a pebble causing a tiny ripple in the pond compared to what we should get, the waves we should get from the Mets with the trade deadline just a little more than a month away. There should be plenty more. But where does it stop? Like Freddie Peralta, okay, yeah. You've got some bullpen arms you could move. Brooks Raley, AJ Minner. But how far do you go in tearing it down if you're the Mets? I think, look, this is where the possible change to a cap and floor system really does come into serious focus for all teams, but especially a team like the Mets. Because in a world without a cap, the Mets could conceivably tear it all down, maybe spend a year finding their footing again, and then dive right back into free agency. Or just dive straight into free agency this offseason, right? Like, what's stopping them? Keep spending. None of it matters. Because there's no cap, and you can buy your way out of mistakes. But in a cap and floor system, you can't screw up and sign Bo Bichette. I know it's a shorter term deal, but like, you can't sign Bo Bichette and then get nothing out of him and decide after a year that you're going to move on, or half a year to move on. You can't give Juan Soto a massive contract, which Juan Soto deserves, as much money as can possibly be given to him, and then try to build a roster out around him without making some really smart personnel moves. The Mets haven't done any of this. They've completely fallen flat on their face. And if 2027 is the first year of a salary cap in Major League Baseball, they are going to be hard-pressed to figure out how they're going to turn it around without just outspending everyone. And see, this is what I talk about when I say that the salary cap is important and it needs to be implemented. It's not because I don't want dudes to make money. Get paid. Get paid by all means. That's why I don't agree with the one part of the proposal yesterday that seemed wonky from the league. The hard cap on contract lengths and values. I don't like that. If a team wants to go out and blow up their cap by giving a dude 15 years and $50 million a year, by all means, let them go ahead and do it. They got to manage their own cap. You can't manage it on a player-by-player basis for them. So I don't agree with that part. But I do agree in philosophy with the idea of a salary cap in Major League Baseball. Because then a team like the Mets can't just buy their way out of all these mistakes. They can't. They're screwed for the foreseeable future now. Unless they make some really shrewd trades and are able to develop some young guys at cost-effective numbers to surround Soto with going forward, because he's not going anywhere, I wouldn't think. And again, anything's possible, I guess. So that's your breaking baseball news this morning. Carlos Mendoza fired by the Mets. Just how much do they tear things apart there? But it does tie into this latest MLB proposal, which again falls under the umbrella of a cap and a floor in Major League Baseball, which I think 99% of fans want. I get it. You're a Dodgers fan. Maybe you're a Phil's fan. Maybe you're a Mets fan, and you're like, well, if my team has the money, I'd like them to be able to spend the money. I don't care. It's not my money. I get that. But again, I don't want your team to be able to buy their way out of mistakes if my team isn't capable of buying their way out of mistakes to the same extent. And look, my team, the Pittsburgh Pirates. If you're an A's fan, if you're a Rays fan, if you're a Guardians fan, you get tired of hearing about how, okay, we're going to develop these young guys, and then they're going to go off somewhere else because we can't afford to keep them. BS. You can spend more money. That's why I like the floor part. And yesterday included, the proposal from Major League Baseball to the Players Association included some things that players should be happy about. An increase in minimum salaries. An elimination of qualifying offers in free agency. An earlier start to free agency. All of that stuff the players should accept. But because it's sitting there under the umbrella of a cap and floor system, they go, this is garbage. No, it's not garbage. It's what's coming, whether you like it or not. As I said earlier, you can eat the vegetables sitting there on your plate, or you can sit there all night long until you clean the plate. And right in the middle of that plate is a cap and floor system. And by the way, I'm going to keep referring to it that way. A cap and floor system. It's not just the institution of the salary cap. And that's one of those little things, one of those little verbiage things that the players are going to continue to bring up over the next, 6 months or however long this plays out. They're going to keep mentioning the new salary cap system that Major League Baseball wants to employ. No. It's a cap and floor system. And yeah, it's based off of revenues. It's a 50-50 split between the players and the owners. Which means, by the way, you'd get to see some of the owners' books and just how much they're really bringing in. But it's what works in every other major professional North American league. And the players should be happy with the elimination of qualifying offers, free agency a year earlier, an increase in minimum salaries. Now, another thing I do not agree with is the hard cap on contract lengths and values. Don't like that. But I tell you, more of these proposals than not fall in line with how the average, everyday sports fan feels about baseball. Eliminate the salary deferrals so that you can't give a guy $500 million, but defer $400 million of it 2 decades out. No. That's called circumventing the cap. A variation of bird rights that they have in the NBA, where you're able to make a better offer to your own free agents than other teams can. Now, in the NBA, it's slightly different. You're able to literally circumvent the cap with bird rights, full bird rights, and do whatever it takes to keep your own players. Maybe that's the point it gets to in Major League Baseball. But the good faith effort is being made by the league to address things that fans want. And that's the other part of this, too, is the perspective we get from the players more often than not on this is, well, it's not what we want. The owners are trying to keep more money for themselves and give us less. Let me count on one hand the number of fans that care. Oh, wait. None. Fans have their own concerns about the game. And it's not how you divvy up the billions. Honestly, it isn't. We don't care if the players get 55% of the revenue or 50% of the revenue or somewhere in between. We don't. We just care that all teams have to be held to the same window of guidelines, so that the bottom 8 to 10 spend more and stop crying poor mouth, and that the top 6 to 8 are held to an upper limit so they can't buy their way out of mistakes. That's what fans care about. And so, once again, a good faith proposal, even if you don't like some of the points on that proposal, like the draft points that they brought up last week about limiting the draft to just college players and a separate international draft. And I didn't necessarily get on board with that. But at the very least, every week or two, Major League Baseball is coming back to the Players Association saying, hey, we're building a framework here. We're trying to work with you guys. Free agency can start earlier. We'll increase minimum salaries more than they've ever been increased before. We'll eliminate the qualifying offers. All these things that players should look at and say, oh, okay, good, I like that. And instead, because it's under the cap and floor system, the players and the Players Association dismiss it out of hand. The fans are going to end up siding with those people that are trying to get baseball on the field next spring. And so far, I've seen a lot more from the league side than I have from the Players Association side that at the very least build some points for negotiation. If not a complete and total framework, there are things that can be talked about within the league's proposals to the players. The players just stop and say, I see the word cap right there. No, don't want to talk about it. Hey, again, you're acting like a petulant toddler. The veggies are on the plate, Connor. You're going to have to eat them. Or else you'll sit there all night. One other interesting point to this, something the players have proposed is banning prop bets. And a lot of that has to do with the harassment players face online from ridiculous people. And I hope you're not one of them. If you're within the sound of my voice and you're one of those people that goes on social media to DM a player after he only strikes out 4 instead of 6 and you miss the over on the 5.5K prop, like, you go outside, find a hobby, touch grass, as the kids say. But it's also because that is the easiest way for organized crime to get their hooks into players via the prop bets. I have no problem eliminating prop bets. Look, I like betting on sports. I do. You reduce the number of markets available to bet on? I'd be disappointed. Like, am I going to bet Jacob Mizorowski's over strikeout prop tonight? Yes. Am I going to bet Jacob Mizorowski's over outs prop tonight? Yes. But if they weren't there, would I just find another way to bet on Jacob Mizorowski by betting on the Brewers? Yes. So I have no problem with that. The league is putting forth a good faith effort to try and hammer out the bullet points of a framework for an agreement under the cap and floor system. And the players just continue to sit there, put their fingers in their ears and go, la, 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 cap and floor, I can't hear you. La, 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 cap, can't hear you. No, that's, again, not how it works. This isn't preschool. You have to sit down and talk like an adult at some point. And one side has done that so far. The other side, just sitting there in their wet diaper crying. Coming up at the top of the hour, we'll get back into the World Cup with legendary soccer commentator Tommy Smith. I cannot wait to pick his brain about just how far he thinks the U.S. can go in this World Cup. Their round of 32 knockout match Wednesday afternoon in Santa Clara, California against Bosnia and Herzegovina. Coming up in about 20 minutes or so, MLB at the halfway point. Who would be in the playoffs right now? Have you taken a gander at the standings lately? Who actually says take a gander? I don't know, but we'll do it. Next, though, power ranking the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. You're not going to like this whole list. There will be someone left off that you will hate. You will get mad at me. That's okay. That's why we do this. It's Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Top of the hour, the legend, Tommy Smith joins us. I can't wait to hear that Irish accent. We're going to talk World Cup with Tommy at the top of the hour. Coming up in just about exactly 1 hour from now. Right around 11:20, 11:25 a.m. Eastern. Same time, but with an 8 Pacific. Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA insider, going to join us to talk about everything going on between the trades and the draft and impending free agency and the recent report from Shams Charania that as of yesterday, the Los Angeles Lakers have not made an offer to LeBron James. Good. They shouldn't. Talk to Nick Friedel about all that. Exactly 1 hour from now. Coming up in 20 minutes, we are at the mathematical halfway point of the Major League Baseball season. I know some teams have only played like 78, 79 games. A couple have played as many as 82. But everybody's right around that 80 to 81 game sweet spot. So I want to take a look at the standings. Take a look at the matchups that we would have if the playoffs started today. And look for one team each in the AL and NL that we think could leap into the playoff bracket on either side, and a team we would then commensurately take out. That coming up in 20 minutes. By the way, the breaking MLB news this morning, the Mets finally put him out of his misery as they have made official the firing of Carlos Mendoza this morning. How much more will they tear things down? That's the question. Andy Green taking over, by the way, moving from the front office. He managed the Padres for 3.5 years or so, 2016 through 19, I believe. Andy Green moving down from a player development role to take over as interim manager. How many pieces get moved before the deadline? How much more do they maybe have to tear down in free agency? Depending on what free agency looks like, because that's a huge question mark too. It is a bad time to be a team who has overspent and still lost. Like, it is a terrible time to be that team. At least if the Dodgers, under a new cap and floor system, would have to restructure some things to get under the cap, they're still the Dodgers, and they have a great scouting and development staff, and they'd figure out a way to make it work and probably still win. The Mets, on the other hand, there's no getting around it. They're screwed. MLB at the halfway point coming up, like I said, about 15, 20 minutes from now here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. You can always get us inside your Westwood One Sports app, also inside the Odyssey app, AUDACY, and we are live across North America on Sirius XM channel 375. I played the Instagram post from Brandon Ayuk earlier. It's just him prattling on again about playing for the Washington Commanders, which I don't think he understands. He can't just manifest and make happen. The Niners have to move on from him officially. And if I were John Lynch, I would let him rot on the restricted list as long as he's doing stupid stuff like dancing around, making TikToks in a Commanders hat. But that's just me. But it did get me to thinking about wide receiver groups across the NFL. You know, in light of the Brenton Strange and Kyle Pitts contracts earlier this week, we spent yesterday at least a couple of minutes. I did power ranking the best wide or tight end groups. We had a big disagreement about why I didn't have the Raiders in the top 5. Fair. That's what power rankings are for. Perhaps we will disagree about these power rankings as well. So, with no further ado, let me give you the one, the only definitive, only right power rankings for the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. Are you ready? Number 5, the Seattle Seahawks. Oh, yeah, baby. Yeah. Seattle at number 5. Why? Jackson Smith and Jigba. Hello? I don't know how much effectiveness Cooper Kupp has left. I think he's probably still got a year or 2 left in the tank. But have we seen what Rashid Shaheed is capable of? And you may say, Chris, yeah, in the return game, that's great. Rashid Shaheed is a legitimate weapon through the air as well. I love the way they've built out that receiving core. So as far as a group of three, is there a better group of three in the NFL right now? Maybe one other one. But best wide receiver, yeah. Yeah, one of the best groups of three. Seattle's number 5 for me. Number 4, it's not a group of three, it's a pair. And it's the best 1-2 receiving combo in the NFL. It's George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb at number 4 with the Dallas Cowboys. Now, when I first rolled through this in my head last night, obviously, Pickens and Lamb are the first pair that come to mind, probably, outside of maybe another pair that we'll get to in a minute. And I don't think, as a pair, I don't think you can beat them. But this is a ranking of the entire receiving core for a team. And once you get beyond Pickens and Lamb, what are we working with in Dallas? Honestly. If one of these guys were to go down, yes, the other one is capable of carrying things, as we saw Pickens do while Lamb was down last year. But when all of a sudden you go from Pickens and Lamb to one or the other, and then Ryan Flournoy or the hollowed-out husk of Marcus Valdes-Scantling, as a Steelers fan, I witnessed that last year. I'm here to tell you, it's not that great. Kevontae Turpin, okay. But best pair, Pickens and Lamb. But as far as a receiving group as a whole, I have the Cowboys 4th. Number 3, I really like this receiving group, at least when they're all healthy and on the field together. Now, they just got to have somebody get them the ball. Can Kyler Murray be that dude? The Minnesota Vikings are number 3 for me. I mean, based on Jay Jetta alone, Justin Jefferson. And then when Addison is also healthy, they're right up there as far as pairs go. They're not Lamb and Pickens. Let's not get crazy. Okay? They're not Chase and Higgins, who we'll get to in a couple of minutes. But that's a really strong pair. And then you add Jawan Jennings as well, who I think, if we're just scrolling through the list of wide receiver 3s in the league, is, where are we going to put him? He's capable of top 5, if not better. Could it be the best wide receiver 3 in the league? That might be pushing it. But I really like what they did in getting Jennings on a great bargain basement deal, too. So, Vikings number 3 for me. Seahawks 5, Cowboys 4, Vikings 3 as I power rank the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. Number 2, I just mentioned him a moment ago. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. It's Chase. It's Higgins. And let's not ignore the fact that Andrei Iosivas has come around to be a very strong wide receiver 3. But group as a whole, as a pair, Chase and Higgins right there with Pickens and Lamb in Dallas. And one other group that I'm going to get to in a second. But as a group of 3, still very, very strong. So, plus you got Joey Burr getting you the football. So I have the Bengals wide receiver group number 2. Seahawks 5, Dallas 4, Minnesota 3, Cincy 2. Ooh, who's he going to have number 1? There's a couple of options here. He's going to leave somebody off the list? Yeah, I'm going to leave somebody off the list. Number 1, the Detroit Lions. Absolutely. Amon-Ra, Jameson Williams. I would put those 2 right there, just a hair behind Chase and Higgins. Maybe right there with Chase and Higgins as the best duo behind Lamb and Pickens. If we were just doing duos, it would be Lamb, Pickens, and then it would be probably a tie at number 2 between Chase Higgins and St. Brown and Williams. But again, I'm not ranking duos. I'm ranking wide receiver groups, and you got to add in Isaac Tesla, who was a red zone machine for the Lions last year. So that is the only definitive power ranking, at least in my mind, of the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. Seahawks number 5, Cowboys 4, Vikings 3, Bengals 2, Lions 1. Executive producer Bill Zimmerman sitting there waiting to critique my list and tell me who I missed and how I got this wrong. Right, Bill?
I wish I was, Chris, but I think you got the right 5. I mean,
really?
I really do. Like, you could sit there with the Rams. I think that's probably the 6th team if you want to put the Rams in the mix. Now, I don't think I necessarily agree with the order. I think the Minnesota Vikings have to be the first team. I think they have to be the top team. Once they brought in Jawan Jennings, that trio is the best trio in the NFL. And I don't think it's personally even that close. But I do think the 5 is the right 5 to have.
Yeah, I thought about that because, again, like I said a couple times here, it's a ranking of a wide receiver room. And so extra weight should be given to the full group. But I really like what Tesla did with the Lions last year. I think he's going to continue to develop. I think well-rounded 1 through 3 and maybe beyond. Who'd they draft this year? Maybe like Greg Dortch, I think they took. Not going to maybe be an immediate impact all the time, but the Lions wide receiving group is the best for my money. The Bengals, because I really like Yoshi Voss as well at 2. So I want to see Jordan Addison stay on the field for 17 games before I'm willing to elevate them up to the top of the list. It's not usually injury. It's just usually stupid decisions with Addison that keep him off the field. But if he stays on the field for all 17 games, if all 3 of those guys are healthy for all 17, then yeah, I'll grant you the Vikings could vault up to number 1 on that list. The Rams, you're right, are going to be, if anybody's sitting down and power ranking their top 5 wide receiver groups, they're going to look at the Rams and go, excuse me, dummy, Puka and Adams, what are you thinking? And I would say that's great. How old is Devontae Adams now? And what is Puka going to look like this year? Maybe I'm making too much out of the off-field issues this offseason. Maybe Puka will go back out there and look just like himself, no problem. Maybe ageless wonder Devontae Adams does not, in fact, age, and they're worth a ranking somewhere in the top 5, maybe better than their division rival Seahawks. But again, that's a duo and not necessarily the whole room. You get beyond the first 2 in LA, and I think there are question marks, not just counting the question marks with their top 2. So we agree on the 5. This is landmark. I didn't leave anybody off the list. I don't know if Tyler...
Except for Luther Burden and Roma Dunze and Jade Walker and Khalif
Raymond. This is why I'm really glad we did this on a day when Kenny is off, because he would be lighting up the chat right now and literally jumping into things, and I'm sure Grant would do the same. The fact that Tyler hasn't thrown up any objections, I feel good about this list overall. Lions 1, Bengals 2, Vikings 3, Cowboys 4, Seahawks 4. The definitive power ranking of the best wide receiver groups in the NFL. Tyler just jumped into the chat, said, unfortunately, I can't argue.
Look what you've done, Chris. You ruined the segment with such a good list.
I really have. I should have mixed it up a little bit more. I should have included like the Cardinals at number 4 just to piss someone off.
Marvin Harrison breakout season incoming.
Yeah, exactly. So I think what we do is, since I am filling in for Nick a good bit over the next couple of weeks, we might just have to pick a position group every day to power rank, and I will do a better job going forward, Bill. I promise. Boy Scouts honor. What's the Boy? Is it 2 fingers or is it 3 fingers? I don't even know. I wasn't actually in Boy Scouts.
Neither
I raised myself. I was a feral child. I grew up in the 80s and 90s. Thank you. Mike Brown just showed me. It's the 2 fingers. Is it the Vulcan thing? No. Scouts honor. I will do a better job of being more divisive in my position group rankings as we go through position group by position group over the next couple of weeks while I'm filling in intermittently for Nick. here on You Better You Bet. It is Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on Westwood One Sports. If you're unable to pick up the phone at 310-840-4910, you can always throw feedback into the chat on YouTube, youtube.com/@thekostos, TheKostos. Grant throwing out there as well the idea of the Jags being in the list just to ruffle some feathers. Yeah, they did not come close. Long snapper rankings we may have to skip over. I don't know if we'll have enough time to get to those at some point in the next couple of weeks. Tommy Smith, legendary soccer commentator, going to join me at the top of the hour to talk about the World Cup. The U.S. losing to Turkey last night, but we already knew they were moving on, and we knew before the match even kicked off who they were going to face. It was going to be Bosnia. It will be Wednesday afternoon in the Bay Area, Santa Clara. What does Tommy expect from that match, and just how deep in the World Cup can the U.S. go? That's coming up at the top of the hour at 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific. But coming up next, we're basically mathematically at the halfway point of the Major League Baseball season. Yes, it took the Mets half a season to fire Carlos Mendoza. Oh, man, I thought that was going to happen like the second week of the season. But for the teams that are in it, what would the playoff matchups look like today? Which teams do we see maybe jumping in to those playoff matchups, and teams that we would pull out right now at the halfway point of the Major League season? That's next. Plus some more breaking news. This in relation to someone we talked about earlier, maybe not getting the just due respect they deserve. All on the way here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Forget just disrespecting the cash cow. How about just totally out and out pushing her out of the game? That in just a second here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. Top of the hour, Tommy Smith joins us to talk World Cup. Nick Friedel coming up in about 35 minutes, our Odyssey NBA insider on a Friedel Friday. We'll talk to him about the draft. Obviously, the LaMelo Ball deal to Minnesota and everything else going on as free agency looms on the very near horizon for the NBA. Speaking, though, of the footy, it's time for the world's top stars to go head-to-head on the pitch. You can grab today's Odds Boost token, join the excitement, and make your World's Game moment. Activate your token for any World's Game bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if your bet wins. It's all waiting for you right now inside the BetMGM app. Download it today, and please gamble responsibly. So Caitlin Clark out for the Indiana Fever. That was announced this morning. She'll miss Saturday's game, and there is no indication right now as to how long she will be out. We mentioned this in the high five right off the top of the show, the 5 biggest stories of the day right off the top. The 1-game suspension for Alyssa Thomas wouldn't be as egregious if it weren't for the fact that it seems to rest on just a throne of contempt for Caitlin Clark within the WNBA. And the WNBA is where it is financially right now because of Caitlin Clark joining the league. And it's not a disrespect to all the other players in the WNBA. It's not. It's just an acknowledgement that when Caitlin Clark came to the WNBA, she brought eyeballs. And with eyeballs come money and a new CBA and better salaries and better working conditions, better travel conditions. And yet players around the WNBA continue to treat Caitlin Clark like she's the bad guy. It doesn't compute for me. It just doesn't. But if you were hoping to catch a little hoops this weekend, WNBA style, know that Caitlin Clark won't be available to the Indiana Fever. MLB halfway point. We are there. Most teams sitting right around the 80 to 82 game mark. And as the standings sit right now, no, the Mets are not in it. They fired Carlos Mendoza this morning, and I imagine we'll start to really tear things down in earnest over the next month with the trade deadline approaching. What's that look like? What can they get for some players? I don't know, but it's not. I think it's important to note that if the impending structure of the CBA really does impose a cap, and not just the cap and floor that I've made it a point to talk about, but it imposes a hard cap, it's going to be really difficult for the Mets to dig themselves out of this right away, which is the whole point of the cap. You can't make a bunch of expensive mistakes and then just buy your way out of it. So the Mets are not in it. We know that, right? As the standings sit right now, this is what your playoff matchups would be in Major League Baseball. You ready? In the American League, your top 3 division winners would be the Yankees, the White Sox. See, this is when I would appreciate Kenny, our board op, being here. He's off today. And the 3rd division winner, who would have to play in the wild card round, would be the Mariners. Your wild cards would be Tampa, Cleveland, and right now, by a percentage point, it would be the Houston Astros. Although, like I said, it's just a percentage point that they lead Texas and the A's and the Jays by. Yeah, it's tight and messy in that American League wildcard picture. Right now you have 6 teams within a game and a half of each other for the final wildcard spot in the American League, and they're all under 500. But again, the current picture would be wildcard series between the Stros and the M's out west. The winner would play the White Sox. And the Guardians and the Rays the winner would face the Yankees. In the National League, picture would look like this. Dodgers would be your 1 seed. Brewers would be your 2 seed. Braves would be the 3rd division winner and have to play in the wild card. Phillies, Cubs, Cards would be the 3 wild cards. And just behind them, chasing them down, the Padres are a half game out. Marlins a game and a half. You get back to the D-backs at 2, Pirates at 2.5, and even the Nats, who are 500, 3 games back of the final wild card. The matchups would be the Cardinals and Braves, winner to go on to face Milwaukee, and the Cubs and the Phils, winner to go on to face the Dodgers. All of that being said, I don't think this is how it'll set up when we get to the end of September. I don't see the Astros holding on to that final wild card spot. I don't. I do see a team like the Rangers scratching and fighting and clawing their way up into the final wild card spot. Either way, I don't think whoever it would be would get past the divisional round. I think it really feels, in my opinion anyway, like we're ticketed for a Mariners-Yankees ALCS. Feels like the Mariners' starting pitching is starting to finally find some of that consistency, although they lost it at times. Bryce Miller had 11 strikeouts, though, didn't he, yesterday in a loss to the Pirates? But I still feel like Seattle Yankees in the AL is what we're ticketed for. I could see the Rangers jumping into the wild card picture, but not getting far. National League side, I know I just mentioned that there's multiple teams between them and the final wild card spot that currently belongs to the Cardinals. I'm not being a homer by saying this, I promise. In fact, I've pushed back against this most of the first half of the season. If the Pirates get some bullpen help, if they go out and make a deal for former Bucko Aroldis Chapman and shore up the back end of their bullpen, that's a team that could scratch and fight and claw their way into one of those final wild card spots, maybe pushing the Cardinals or the Cubs out of the way to get there. Now, I don't see the Pirates, the Cubs, the Cards, the D-backs, the Marlins, any of them, the Padres for that matter, getting past Atlanta or Philly. And I do think we're once again ticketed for a Brewers-Dodgers NLCS. Just given the way they've played for the last 2 months now, month and a half, 2 months, I don't think it's crazy to look at the Brewers and see them out of the National League side. I don't know if Rob Manfred would be signing up for Brewers-Mariners in the World Series instead of Yankees-Dodgers, but I wouldn't mind it. World Cup continued last night. U.S. lost, but Christian Pulisic looked good back on the pitch. We'll talk to legendary soccer commentator Tommy Smith about how far the Americans can go in this World Cup. That's next here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
It is the Power Hour. Final hour of the show here on a fabulous Football Friday. F-U-T-B-O-L. Football Friday here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. We'll talk NBA offseason moves in 20 minutes with Nick Friedel before we wrap up the show with our 3 stars of the day. But the U.S. last night, their final group stage match of the 2026 World Cup. A painful loss to Turkey in L.A., but they still win the group. Mauricio Pochettino will tell you that. He will remind you of that. Hey, yeah, we lost. We won the group, and we're through to the knockout rounds. And on Wednesday, in the round of 32, they will face Bosnia and Herzegovina in Santa Clara with a chance to move on. Just how deep can they go in the 2026 World Cup? What do we take away from those group stage matches, especially the return of Christian Pulisic to the pitch last night? I thought he looked excellent. But I'm just an average everyday sports fan. Why not talk to an expert and one of the best soccer studio analyst and color commentator for ESPN, a legend, the great Tommy Smith, joins us now here on Westwood One Sports. Good morning, Tommy. How are you?
I'm fine, Chris. How are you? Thank you for that lovely introduction.
Well, no, look, you have been pontificating on the world's game longer than I've been alive. And you know the game backward and forward, upside down and right side up. So I can think of no one better to talk to as we start to wind down the group stage and move towards the knockout round than you, sir. So I appreciate your time. Let me start, though, before we get to the U.S. winning their group, despite the loss last night, Pulisic's return to the pitch as well. I want to start with sort of a 50,000-foot view, if we could, Tommy, of where we're at in this tournament with the contenders. Because other than Mexico, we have yet to see anyone go a perfect 3-0 in their group. And sure, there are opportunities for that in the next couple of days, specifically with France and Argentina. But it feels to me, just as the average sports fan, like maybe we haven't yet seen a team take over this World Cup as the clear-cut favorite. I know the betting odds would tell us it's the French. I know Argentina, with Lionel Messi possibly playing in his last World Cup, anything is possible. But as you look at it from sort of an overview, and you look at the contenders, the French, the Argentinians, the Spaniards, the Portuguese, how do you handicap what we've seen so far through the group stage, Tommy?
Well, Chris, you see, there's a difference this time around because you don't have to go win all the games in the group because they now go head to head. So I think that's made a difference, and I don't necessarily think it's a good difference because you have a lot of, as we say in the business, dead rubber games because, like last night, the game didn't mean anything to the US, but you would never know the way Turkey and the US played that it didn't mean anything because the US, as you rightfully pointed out, have won the group. I mean, obviously, the way the French played in both games, you have to say, well, you know, Mbappe can score goals against anybody. Now, my dark horse all along has been Norway, and of course, Norway will play France today. And my dark horse, because of Haaland, the goal scorer, is probably one of the best goal scorers in the world. Now, if you watched last night's game, just write in your notebook a name called Güler, Guler. He was the man who scored the first goal for Turkey, and he was the man who nutmegged Pulisic to set up the second goal. He's only 18 years of age. He's playing in Spain with Real Madrid. That is one of the stars of the future. Spain, obviously growing into the tournament, they didn't have a great first game against Cape Verde, but in the second game, they went all out and they made it look easy. So I would imagine that, you know, Spain and France would definitely be the teams that you have to look out for. The US on a good run. We'll see how it goes. This is a very tough Bosnia and Herzegovina side. You know, they blow hot and they blow cold, but they've got a big target man inside Dzeko who can score goals with the best of them, and he's the man they're going to have to take out.
Yeah, I want to get into that matchup, Wednesday's matchup in Santa Clara between the U.S. and Bosnia in a little more detail in just a second, because I tried building an analogy for American football fans earlier that I think might hold true. But again, you're the expert here, so I want to pick your brain about it. But initial reactions to last night, Tommy. I know Pochettino subbed 9 of his usual 11 starters. He was getting guys some tread on the tires, so to speak, making sure they got out there and felt the game and giving other guys some rest. Pulisic, though, out there for the final 30-plus minutes or so, I thought looked excellent in the opportunities that he had. Maybe didn't finish, but still looks like a guy who, if he gets the ball anywhere near the middle of the field, down towards the box, can make something happen in an instant.
Yeah, he can, provided you're not waiting on him. I mean, from now on, there are going to be players waiting on him. You know, last night, if you've seen him, he got very free wide on the left. Now, you know, Weah, I think, played himself off the game last night, or off the team, because Pulisic came in to replace him. And Pulisic should have actually won the game. He had 3 opportunities, and he didn't put one of them away. One of them hit the post. One of them was a fantastic save from the goalkeeper. The one thing, and I know he's rusty, and that was the reason why they played him last night, because if he didn't play last night, Chris, he would have gone by Wednesday. He would have been out of the game for 19 days. And as a soccer player, you can't be out of the game for 19 days and come back in and play the way you should. So, you know, he looked decent enough last night, but he gave the ball away 2-3 times. That's not a good thing to do at international soccer, because if you're up against a good team and somebody like Mbappe gets the ball, you're looking at it in the back of the net very, very quickly. So we'll see how he does on Wednesday.
The great Tommy Smith with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos on You Better You Bet. Looking at the World Cup as a whole and also looking at just how deep the U.S. can go. Again, I know there were changes to the lineup last night, Tommy, but I do think if you're an American soccer fan, there might be some level of concern about the defensive breakdowns, not just late on the final game-winning goal for Turkey, but also early in the immediate response to the Americans launching the scoring.
Yeah, and, you know, if you go back over the games, okay, the game against Paraguay, the first half was fantastic. I never saw an American team play like that in my life. The second half wasn't great, and that was because, I suppose, it was such a downer because Pulisic didn't come out. Then they played against Australia. They got the break again. I mean, no team has ever gotten 2 own goals in the World Cup games, consecutive games. The US has gotten it. And then they kind of held off the Australians, and it wasn't a great second half. I mean, there's a lot of questions about the back line. I mean, one of them is supposed to be injured, but he's playing really well. You know, one of them is 38 years of age. He's playing really well. When does that come to a stop? I mean, that's the big question that Pochettino has to face now. I mean, I know he was livid over last night. He was not at all happy with the press because he figured that the press weren't saying that they had won the group, and last night's game meant nothing. And when I started off, I said I didn't like those dead rubber games, and I still don't like them last night, because if you look at what happened, I mean, Trusty went forward there towards the end of the game. If that had been Pulisic and he had gotten injured again, like Trusty did, it would be a disaster for the US. So that's why I hate those dead rubber games.
Let me ask you this, Tommy. Is the U.S. Too aggressive at times? Is that what leads to some of those breakdowns?
Yeah. They move up the field very quickly. Pochettino wants them to attack, and his goal is to pin you in your own half of the field, and the US keep in possession. Now, you can do that against, I mean, Paraguay, they're okay. Australia, they're okay. Turkey, they're not even okay. They didn't win a game until last night. In fact, they had 62 shots going into the game last night, and they hadn't scored a goal. They scored one on the 63rd shot. So the US haven't come up against any of the big dogs yet. I mean, there's a couple of teams in this competition that's really going to surprise a few people. I think Colombia are one of them. Ecuador, what a game they pulled off yesterday. What a win they pulled off against the German team, who many feel are going to go deep in this tournament. So the US, I mean, for it to be a success, Chris, they got to win at least this game in the round of 32, and maybe even go further than the round of 32. They've got to go to the round of 16, which means there's 16 teams left, and the US has to be one of them. So it'll be interesting to see how this one goes. I mean, Bosnia and Herzegovina would not be considered one of the big dogs. But I think I read a stat last night somewhere. I may be wrong, but I think I read it somewhere that the US have played European teams 20 times and they have not beaten one of them yet. That's not a good stat.
No, that's not a good sign. Also, the fact that if we start to look ahead to Wednesday afternoon, you mentioned Pochettino wants them to press, to be aggressive, to attack. And from what I've read about this Bosnian team, Tommy, I know, they're not as talented as the U.S. team, but they seem to play with a level of patience. They want to see if they can possess the ball. And if they're not possessing the ball, force you into mistakes where they can counter-strike and counterattack down the wings with some long balls. And that would seem to indicate against a U.S. backline that has shown their holes that perhaps it only takes one or two runs for Bosnia to hit the back of the net once or twice, and that would completely change the complexion of this knockout match on Wednesday.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree with you any more than what you just said. I mean, the U.S. have to be very, very careful. This is a good counter-attacking team, and they have players of the same quality as the U.S. Believe me, these guys are around the tough leagues in Europe as well, so they know exactly what's going on. And, they have a mentality that, they come from a country, it's two countries together, Bosnia and Herzegovina, and, everything comes tough to them, and they are tough players. They won't be pushed aside very easily. I mean, you got to be careful when they go on the counter-attack. You got to be careful of the speed because, as you rightfully point out, the holes are opening up in the U.S. defence that shouldn't be opening up. Okay, last night he made 9 changes, but there was times I could have driven an 18-wheeler down through the middle and nobody would have stopped me. You can't do that if you're going to play Bosnia and Herzegovina and beat them. You have to be tight. You have to be tight. You can't leave any spaces between. When you look at the back four, if he's playing a back four and they're flat, you can't have any more than 10 yards between any of them, because if you do, somebody is going to run through them. And once you get behind it, when you have the defender running back to try to tackle, then you're in trouble. If the defender is not coming forward all the time with the ball in front of him, you're in big trouble. Jack Charlton, who was a famous coach for the Irish, that's the way he won games for the Irish. He would force them to kick the ball over the top and have the defender running in the wrong direction. Because if you get a defender running in the wrong direction, they're generally not very smart. I was an attacker, that's why. But if you get them running in the wrong direction, you can really put them under a lot of pressure.
Tommy Smith, the great legendary soccer commentator for ESPN, with us here on Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. I have this tendency, Tommy, to sometimes get ahead of myself, so I look out at the bracket and the way things may fall if the U.S. can get past Bosnia. It's probably a matchup against someone from the Group G of Egypt, Iran, Belgium. And if they get past that, maybe they get all the way to the quarterfinals. It's a possible matchup with Spain. Are they built to take advantage of different teams differently? And what I mean by that is this attacking style. As it gets later in the tournament, are they built to take advantage of teams with that attacking style, or is that tendency to leave themselves vulnerable on the back line going to put them in the spot where they have to adjust the way they play or else face an exit before those quarterfinals?
Yeah, you're right again. I mean, you can't do what they're doing in these games and get away with it. I mean, you mentioned 2 names there. You mentioned Belgium, who are a very, very good side, and you mentioned Spain, who I think will probably be in the final. I mean, Spain have a young player, Lamine Yamal, who plays for Barcelona, and he's only 18 years of age, and he will just tear your defence apart. I don't care who you are. He's played against the best players in Europe, and he tears them apart. So no matter who's on the American backline, if they face Spain, they are in deep trouble, because if Lamine Yamal, who maybe have a little injury, if he's playing that day, there's no way to stop him. So I don't know how you do it. I mean, I've seen teams try to double him up. I've seen them try to triple him up. The problem is when you concentrate on him, with other teams, you might be able to get away with it because they don't have as many stars as Spain has coming forward. So if you let him take 2 players out of the back line, you're going to open up huge goals for the other stars that Spain have. And believe me, they're a team full of stars. Or if you do that against France, Olise, who I think will be the best player in the World Cup, the lad with the ponytail for France, and he sets up Mbappe, they will just tear you asunder. So it's a very dangerous time when you come. You get past the round of 16, you're in with the big dogs, and it's going to be a ferocious battle.
Tommy Smith with us. Before I let you run, Tommy, I do want to ask, just based on the atmosphere at these matches in the States and the Americans' performance in the group stage, do you get a sense, again, you've been watching soccer your entire life, both abroad and here in the States. Do you get a sense that there is yet another breath of fresh air being pushed into American soccer fandom, and that people, I think back to 1994 and the World Cup and how that put soccer on the national stage here in the United States for a great many average sports fans. Do you get the sense that we're getting another second push for the average sports fan here in America with the way this World Cup is playing out so far?
Oh, definitely. And the fact that the World Cup has been so good, the fact that so many countries have, like Scotland have made some statement for themselves, the Norwegians with the rowing of the boat. And I mean, it's just unbelievable, the interest in soccer at the moment. Now, as you said, in 94, after 94, a couple of years, they started MLS, and MLS has progressed greatly in the United States. And this is just a shot in the arm for soccer in the United States. And just incidentally, I want to give my own little show a push here. I do Grumpy Pundits on Sirius XM with a fella called Rodney Marsh, who captained Man City. Join us during the World Cup. We're there most days, and we'll tell you what we're thinking about. But Chris, this has been unbelievable. With all of the, I was going to say a bad word there, but I let it go. With all leading up to the World Cup, about ticket prices, about everything else, visas, everything else. This has turned out to be an incredible World Cup. I seen the figures yesterday. Already, it's the most attended World Cup ever. I mean, 3 million something, and we're not even out of the first round of the World Cup yet. Imagine what the figures are going to be when this thing is all over. How many people have watched or attended the World Cup, and that's without the television audiences, which has been immense.
Tommy, I can't thank you enough for your time. I can think of no better voice to speak to in the midst of the World Cup as we pivot from the group stage to the knockout rounds than yours. Thank you again for your time, sir. Much appreciated.
You're very kind. Thank you very much, and take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Tommy Smith, as he mentioned, co-host Grumpy Pundits on Sirius XM FC. Also doing the soccer studio analysis and color commentating for ESPN as well. Follow him on X at Tommy Smith with a Y. Tommy Smith ESPN. I mean, that is the sound of, for someone, like I said, who is an average, everyday American sports fan, when I would tune in to soccer on ESPN especially, the voice you wanted to hear was Tommy Smith. So can't thank him enough for taking the time this morning to give us some insight on how the Americans have played to this point, just how deep they can go, and the atmosphere around this World Cup in general, which has just been incredible. Knockout round for the U.S. starts Wednesday, July 1st. So we're now just 5 days away from their matchup against Bosnia in Santa Clara in the round of 32. NBA offseason has taken off already. We've had trades. LaMelo Ball to Minnesota. We've had the draft. Oh, we've got another trade as well. Another Shams bomb that will drop on you here. Isaiah Joe being traded for 2 future second-round picks. So the deals continue as free agency approaches. What do we make of all of it? Nick Friedel, our Odyssey NBA insider, will join us to talk about it next, right here on Westwood One Sports.
Welcome back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Props to Grant for playing a fellow Yinzer, a fellow Pittsburgher. Little Wiz Khalifa coming back. Free. Welcome back into Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. It is a Friedel Friday, so we will catch up with our Odyssey NBA insider, Nick Friedel, in just a moment here. Inside the final hour of the show, it is the Power Hour here on You Better You Bet. You can always get Westwood One Sports inside that Westwood One Sports app and your Odyssey app as well, AUDACY. And we're live across North America, 24/7, Sirius XM Channel 375. I mentioned before the break, Isaiah Joe traded by the Thunder to the Pistons for 2 future second-round picks. I said it yesterday. I don't want to pull a muscle patting myself on the back, but here we go. The Pistons are not messing around. They're not. They are not going to stand idly by and wait to see if they just naturally improve over last year. I'm very curious to see what happens with Jalen Duren, if it's simply managing the restricted free agent number and making sure he comes back. Did they listen to offers? Did they let him go out and explore for other offers? But Duren was the one that didn't perform during the playoffs. And the Pistons aren't going to sit around and wait to see how things fall into place. They're going to go out and make moves, as they've done so far to this point. Again, if you're just joining, acquiring Isaiah Joe from the Thunder for a couple of future second-round picks. That's not the biggest deal that's gone down in the last 24 hours or so. Obviously, LaMelo Ball to Minnesota for picks and Naz Reid. What's that mean for Minnesota, other than trying to find some way for Ball and Anthony Edwards to coexist, not just in the locker room, but in the backcourt, in the huddle before the final shot of the game is going to be taken? And what do we think of the draft as well? A lot to get into with our Odyssey NBA insider, Nick Friedel. Insider calls are brought to you by Hyundai and the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Morning, Nick. How are you this Friday, my friend?
Mr. Mack, I'm doing great. It's great to be with you. And as usual, there's about 100 different things that we can roll into. So let's get it going.
Yeah, I mean, where do we start? It feels like the draft was a month ago, and it was 2 days. So let's start, though, with the biggest move of the last 24 hours, which is the LaMelo Ball trade to Minnesota. Look, if there's a way Chris Finch can get LaMelo Ball to buy in, to play with the same defensive work ethic that has become a part of the DNA there in Minnesota over the last 5 years under Finch, I do think the ceiling here is a trip to the conference finals. But LaMelo Ball, a volume shooter, trying to coexist in a backcourt with Anthony Edwards, I think has a high chance of combustibility. From the Minnesota perspective, before we get to the Charlotte perspective, from the T-Wolves perspective, what do you think of this?
I immediately went, uh-oh, because you and I had the same thought. I went, oh, boy. LaMelo, I just feel like Charlotte was kind of waiting for this moment to get something in return, and there were a whole lot of ups and downs in the LaMelo experience, and the second they felt like they got a solid return, especially on that deal, boom, gone. So could it work in Minnesota? Could LaMelo and Ant find a way together and catch their rhythm? Yeah, I think it could. Would I bet on it? No, because I just don't buy that all of a sudden LaMelo, who has shown to be the same player year after year after year after year, is going to change, and he's going to now start playing the type of defense that they always wanted him to play in Charlotte to begin with.
Yeah, I also think there's a question here, not just about who Naz Reid was for the chemistry of the locker room and how much he was a fan favorite, but more so the actual tangible idea of having multiple guys who you could either play next to each other on the front line and protect the rim, but also when you wanted to get Gobert off his feet, you could have Naz in there handling things for a few minutes at a time on his own. What this does to Minnesota's interior defense, especially in a Western Conference that we know is going to go through the Spurs and Victor Wembanyama.
Chris, I think it's a really good point, and that was the whole thing that everybody kind of got lost in the Naz Reid love affair. I mean, a fan favorite. He was like a state favorite. Everybody you go to these Timberwolves games, everybody's got the tattoos, and everybody's going nuts anytime he does anything. On a basketball perspective, though, when you watch what is happening with the league, you need big-time interior dudes. And if you're taking away one of your main guys, that's where the whole thing I went, oh, boy. You are banking so much on LaMelo to be this difference maker when you know what you have at least in place there not only works, but to your point, for years, the Western Conference teams are going to be trying to figure out Wemby. This is just the tip of the iceberg, what we've seen. So I did not like this move for Minnesota. I think that Charlotte is going to end up feeling a lot better about all of this. I think the defensive presence, at least having another big guy down low in Naz Reid, is going to help Charlotte a lot. And I think when you take away the guys that helped you build to the point that you were at, if you're the Timberwolves, and they start disappearing and you go and make the splashy deal, more often than not in the league, that doesn't work out.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said, too, for the fact that I know LaMelo had some big moments, especially this year, especially down the stretch, the play-in game against Miami, and they were comfortable with him being the guy in those moments. But I'll be honest, if I'm a Hornets fan, I'm probably more excited about seeing how it develops between Kobe White, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller, and just having multiple options now. We get into a spot late in the game, we're drawing something up in the huddle. We got any one of those three, I would think you trust to take the final shot.
I think that's exactly what they're going for, too. They knew they had a bunch of young, talented pieces. And I think by making this move, you give those guys that you just named, Chris, a whole bunch of confidence. Because you say, hey, go do it. We're going to find a way to make it happen night after night. And I think what Charlotte has built in the pieces they already have in place, they keep getting better. I mean, how many times, Chris, through the years where you're like, the hell is Charlotte doing? And now it's like, oh, I understand. Like it makes sense. They're making smart decisions. They've got a good coaching staff in place. It's amazing what happens when you have some kind of certainty in those two factors with a team. So I think it's going to be a very good move long-term for Charlotte. And this is the first time I can remember in years and years that on a national basis, anybody was talking about Charlotte to begin with.
Nick Friedel, Odyssey NBA Insider, with us here on Westwood One Sports Insider Calls, brought to you by Hyundai and the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Learn how it makes every day epic at HyundaiUSA.com. I know it just happened a couple minutes ago, but there have been a lot of these deals, whether it was like Isaiah Stewart to Memphis about 36 hours ago, or Isaiah Joe to Detroit just about a half hour ago, a little less than that. A lot of these secondary pieces getting moved around. In particular, Isaiah Joe to Detroit. I'm curious what your initial reaction is to that, both from the Pistons' perspective. I don't know if you heard me right before you jumped on, but the Pistons aren't going to sit around and wait for this offseason to come to them. But then also from the OKC perspective, which is, hey, we understand we've got to make some moves to stay under the second apron and keep ourselves flexible going forward.
Chris, as far as the Thunder go, that was my first thought because I went, okay, well, they want no part of the second apron that the rest of the league is sitting there going, no. I mean, Jim Dolan, the Knicks owner, had his comments. It is like universally around the league, there are no people that have the real money that are running these teams that want to get anywhere near that thing. So as far as the Thunder go, in my mind, that's all this was because obviously they liked him and they just don't want to touch that second apron. Going back to where the Pistons are at, I mean, I think that he can help, and I think these smaller moves and beef stew, he's going out. I think the Pistons world kind of got rocked a little bit in how the season ended, because by rights, and you and I talked about it in the moment, I mean, the Magic should have rolled by them at the end of that game 6. They shouldn't even gotten out of the first round. So I think they're looking at internally, where can we make some adjustments and what do we need to put more talent around Cade? Okay, but I'm not looking at Isaiah Joe going, all right, this is going to be a very big difference maker. What I would tell you on a broader note to what we're talking about how these moves have started to pop up in the last couple of days or so, free agency, the way you and I knew it and all the people that are listening and watching us right now, it's gone. It used to be, oh my gosh, let's see what happens here. July 1st, anything feels possible. And now you're seeing all these teams that are making, there are some major moves, certainly, like we talked about with LaMelo, we saw with the Giannis deal. But that's happening now before free agency even gets rolling. And that is the shift. That's the new salary cap. That's these teams not wanting to touch the second apron. That is the change, because for so long, it felt like when the summer rolled around, especially if your team had some money under the cap, you could make some adjustments and things could look different. Now, things are looking different, but more often than not, it's coming from trades. It's not coming from straight free agent signings the way we've seen for years and years.
All right, you mentioned them. You brought them up, so let's start to address some of the big names. Giannis to Miami. It does not involve the Celtics, obviously. It does not involve Jaylen Brown, but the Celtics are still clearly invested in trying to move on from Jaylen Brown, which confounds me, but maybe that relationship can't be pieced back together at this point. Let's start with Giannis to Miami. Is it enough for the Heat to take another step, or is this the kind of move that you go, okay, that's nice. Maybe you're not a play-in team. Maybe you make it to the second round.
I do not think it is enough. I think they gave up too much of the depth that helped them over the last few years. And you could say, well, help them do what? All right, fine. But if you're making this move for Giannis, you have to be sure that you're going to find a way to get all the way up or close to the top. And when I look at the Heat, at least this iteration with the pieces that are now around Giannis and Bam, Chris, I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's that much closer either. I would tell you this, though. Giannis is going to come to Miami so pissed off because, one, the Milwaukee thing just imploded. But two, so many people at 31 are sitting there going, he's still great, but he can't stay healthy. He's still great, but I don't know if he was the same player he was a few years ago when he helped him win a title. It's like everything starts with he's awesome, but I think Giannis is going to come in there with a point to prove, and especially once the new deal gets lined up and he kind of commits all the way, people are going to go, all right, maybe we should give this a little more time, because guess what? Giannis is still awesome. Bam is awesome. Spoelstra is one of the very best coaches in the league, and Pat Riley has shown year in, year out for a long, long time that he knows how to build teams. The problem to me, Chris, and it ties into what we were just talking about, when you have all these different cap ramifications, you don't have as much ability to make all these different moves that we've seen in the past. So I understand why Miami did it. Giannis is still great. I just don't think in the end it's enough for them to get to where they want to go.
Does it make sense to you that the Celtics have gotten to the point that they have with Jaylen Brown?
It feels like the breakup is upon us, because we've been hearing about, is Jaylen Brown going somewhere for years now? I mean, go back to that potential deal with the Nets for KD. I mean, that was 3 or 4 years ago. It's like, is Jaylen Brown going to be a part of it? There's got to be something going on behind the scenes in that it can work with Brown and Tatum. We've seen it. They won a title. Jaylen Brown's a finals MVP. But it feels like, Chris, he wants to be the guy. And he can never, ever be the guy in Boston with Tatum. It's never going to happen. So if he really wants to be that dude, he's going to have to be that dude somewhere else. So, no, I'm not surprised. At this point, given all the smoke around a potential deal, it feels like something is going to happen. And you're always going to wonder, how did it get to the point that it got? Because it was kind of rocky, and they always seem to bring it back. I actually think they could run it back and still have success, but there's been so much talk about where Jaylen Brown's going to go, and so much of it is not Boston, which leads you to believe that something's really going to happen this time.
Before I let you run and go enjoy the weekend, Nick, we're contractually obligated to ask the question. I don't even have to make it a question. I just say a single word, a single first name, and you can go from there. LeBron.
I mean, I knew the name was coming. I get it. Mr. Mack, I don't believe that LeBron's going anywhere. I think he ends up with the Lakers again. And I believe that because, one, he's comfortable in L.A., his family's comfortable in L.A., there are so many different opportunities for him in L.A. besides just playing. Two, where's he really going to go? He could go back to Cleveland. We're talking about teams that are good enough to potentially win a title. LeBron makes them better, but I don't think that core is beating the Knicks anytime soon. And I still believe in the Celtics. So, all right. I've heard a lot of people ask about the Warriors. My point all along with LeBron to the Warriors is he's going to have to take $15 million to do it. Why would he do that? On top of the fact that, okay, playing with Steph and Draymond's got to be cool. They're not winning anything. So if you're LeBron and you want to have some kind of realistic chance to at least be in the conversation, you're not going to Golden State. Maybe Cleveland, but you really want to go back there again with all that comes with that. So I understand the interest. He's one of the very best players of all time. I would be surprised if it got to the point where the divorce actually happens and he leaves the Lakers after all this time.
If he doesn't get the kind of deal financially he wants, though, could you see him just walking away?
Chris, I know what he said, and I know what's been out there. There's no way a guy with that big of an ego is just going to walk away and disappear and say, hey, I'm out. I know, he doesn't want a retirement tour. He doesn't want everybody. Yeah, right. This dude, he's got a patch on his jersey for, all the years that he's been in there now. He's the only one. I just don't buy that. This is a guy that wants to be loved, and understandably so. He's entertained millions and millions for years. But the idea that he's just going to walk away after building it up like he's coming back one more time and not receive the adulation from all across the league that he would get if he comes back wherever he comes back and plays, I just don't buy that's going to happen.
Nick, love catching up with you, as always, my friend. Another spectacular Friedel Friday here on Westwood One Sports. Enjoy the weekend, my friend. I'll talk to you next Friday.
You got it, my man. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. Odyssey NBA insider Nick Friedel joins us every Friday. Insider Calls brought to you by Hyundai and the all-new Hyundai Palisade Hybrid. Appreciate his time. It's a hell of a point. I mean, LeBron's not just walking away, right? No, he at the very least wants the rocking chairs in every city, you would think. Or at least one more run at a ring, but is there anywhere where he can go accomplish that? We'll wrap things up, get you our 3 favorite moments of the show, our 3 stars next here on Westwood One Sports.
Back to You Better You Bet on Westwood One Sports.
Mention you're a Yinzer once, and you get a full boatload of Wiz Khalifa. Next time, we'll sprinkle in some Mac Miller, too, for all the Yinzers out there. It's Westwood One Sports. Chris Mack with you in for Nick Kostos today here on You Better You Bet. Our 3 favorite moments of the day with our 3 stars of the day coming up in just a couple of moments. It is that time of year. Every 4 years it happens. The world's top stars go head-to-head on the pitch, and you can grab today's Odds Boost token inside the BetMGM app. Join the excitement and make your World's Game moment. Activate your token for any World's Game bet, and you'll receive a bigger payout if your bet wins. Download the BetMGM app today, and please gamble responsibly. I am actually on a baseball bet. Jacob Mizorowski lined at 8.5 strikeouts. He's averaged 9.5 over his last 11 starts. Also lined at 17.5 outs recorded. I'm going over on both of those at BetMGM as Miz starts at Miller Park against the Cubs later tonight. All right, our 3 favorite moments of the day. We call them our 3 stars. Here we go.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy Beastie. I'm back in action and back on tour this fall. Go to www.commanders.com, get your tickets, and watch us rock out.
You may have had trouble hearing Brandon Ayuk there as he was standing down at the opposite end of the hallway in his home talking about he'll be back on tour later this fall. Go to commanders.com to get tickets. You don't play for the Commanders, Brandon. You're still under contract with the Niners. And if I were John Lynch, I would let you rot on the restricted list for the way you've handled this whole thing. I mean, I so thirsty to get back with his BFF Jaden in Washington. It's just been a disaster. I'm sure we'll get another post from him later today. Our number 2 star.
2.
For it to be a success, Chris, they got to win at least this game in the round of 32 and maybe even go further than the round of 32. They've got to go to the round of 16, which means there's 16 teams left, and the U.S. has to be one of them.
I'll go a step farther, although he's the soccer expert and I'm not. Tommy Smith, legendary soccer commentator from ESPN and SiriusXM earlier in the show. I think they got to get to the quarterfinals for this to be considered a success based on everything we've seen so far and just the energy around the World Cup here in the States. Beat Bosnia, then beat your next opponent, and you're in the quarterfinals, maybe against Spain, which at that point I'd go, okay, good run, boys. But that's where I would go. Great stuff from Tommy Smith earlier. Our number 1 star of the day?
1.
Charlotte was kind of waiting for this moment to get something in return, and there were a whole lot of ups and downs in the LaMelo experience, and the second they felt like they got a solid return, boom, gone. So could it work in Minnesota? Yeah, I think it could. Would I bet on it? No.
Nick Friedel, our Odyssey NBA insider, just a few moments ago talking about the LaMelo Ball trade to Minnesota. I said it yesterday. My initial knee-jerk reaction was I liked this deal much more for Charlotte than I do for Minnesota. And even with the benefit of 24 hours of hindsight, I still feel that way. Look, is there a ceiling for this thing to turn into a conference finals run for the T-Wolves? Yeah, it's out there. If you get LaMelo Ball to buy all into everything Chris Finch is preaching about defense, team play, getting out of the way when it's Anthony Edwards' turn to take the final shot, I don't know if it's going to go that smoothly. I just don't. Meanwhile, in Charlotte, as I talked about with Nick just a couple minutes ago, I'd feel really good about what they're building there and what it means for the other young guys on the roster now that LaMelo is out of the way, so to speak. Kobe White, Con Knipple, Brandon Miller. You've got Naz Reid to help protect the rim now alongside Miles Bridges. I really like what they're building in Charlotte. If I had to pick a team to go from play-in round to legit top 6 in the East this year and maybe even win a series, Charlotte would be that team I would pick. Just like what they've done. What a week it's been. What a Friday it's been. A fabulous football Friday. Thanks to Grant in for Kenny. Thanks to Mike Brown. Thanks to Tyler Morales. Thanks to Bill Zimmerman. I'm Chris Mack. Bleck and Abdallah up next here on Westwood One Sports.